You may have heard my story about the toilet which sunk a U-boat, and here is another story along a similar line. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded and occupied Norway, setting up a puppet government under Vidkun Quisling. A resistance force of Norwegians quickly formed to carry out acts of sabotage and gather intelligence. The economy of Norway was then to a large extent based on subsistence, fishing and farming, and when the Germans commandeered one factory's production of canned sardines for use by its military, the resistance considered what it could do. Using their efficient intelligence network, they learned that the sardines were going to Saint Nazaire, and logic then told them that this was destined for the U-boat fleet. Rather than attempt to destroy the canning plants, the Norwegian resistance tried to think of a subtler form of action. It contacted the British Special Operations Executive, the SOE, a group tasked with espionage and sabotage, who, in Churchill's words, was to set Europe alight. Apparently, the Norwegians asked if the SOE had any form of suitable laxative, and the SOE suggested croton oil. Croton oil is made from the seeds of the croton plant, which is grown in Southeast Asia and parts of East Africa. Today, it's used for research into cancer and pain relief, and is used in folk medicine to treat such things as gout, malaria and other ailments, but I am not aware of any research that has shown that it's effective in these folk remedies. Before World War II, it was used as a laxative, but in extremely small doses. A tiny drop of 0.05 grams in 250 milliliters of castor oil was one of the strongest laxatives available, and even that was considered too dangerous by some pharmacologists. Small amounts of croton oil can kill. 4 seeds from which the oil is made is said to be enough to kill a human and 15 a horse. However, it can be bought as an essential oil today, although I suspect that the amount of croton oil in the essential oil is very small. I said suspect, I don't know. The croton oil was smuggled into Norway, and the Norwegian resistance arranged for it to be put into tins of sardines. The sardines were packed with vegetable oil, and the strong taste of the sardines was said to mask the tiny amounts of croton oil. The sardines were then delivered to the U-boat fleet in France. The U-boats, already noted for the foul stench in the air, had only one toilet on board for around 40 to 60 men. Whereas not everyone would have eaten the sardines at the same time, it could have knocked out a significant amount of the crew and potentially disabled the U-boat, not to mention the intestines of those who had eaten the sardines. This story is recounted in William B. Brewer's 2002 book, Deceptions of World War II. As exciting as this story is, I think it's a myth, although it hasn't stopped lots of other people from repeating it. I accept that because of the extreme potency of croton oil, it would not have been too difficult to smuggle it into Norway, it wouldn't have been too heavy, and accept that it could have been brought to the canning plants and there would have been sufficient people in the plants who were prepared to actually do this act of sabotage, despite the risks to themselves. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find any original materials from any German sources, and as some 80% of the U-boat crews were killed, then the secret might have gone with them. That's not to say, however, that there was not a lot of food requisitioning in Norway. The amount of food confiscated by the Third Reich is not known, but almost 60% of Norway's, admittedly small at the time, industrial production was requisitioned. Here's a photograph of a food queue in Oslo in 1942. Like many countries under Nazi occupation, many in Norway came close to starving. One story about croton oil and submarines that I do believe comes from the US Navy. Sailors during World War II would drain off some of the neutral grain spirits used in to power torpedoes to make their own concoctions. Obviously, this would have an effect on how far the torpedoes could then run, and torpedoes were used in small numbers in submarines. The submarine couldn't carry many of them, and obviously this was going to affect the efficiency of the submarine. Therefore, to stop them doing this, the Navy added a small amount of croton oil to the mix to prevent the sailors from doing this. This, of course, would have had the same effect that it allegedly had in the German U-boat. However, as far as the US Navy was concerned, this didn't work, because the sailors, when they realized what had happened, developed stills which separated the alcohol from the croton oil, as alcohol evaporates at a lower temperature than croton oil, and thus they could continue to produce their homemade drink. So I hope you found that interesting. I'm interested in these sort of myths and trying to actually get to the bottom of them as far as I can. And having said that, most of what I do on this channel is more serious, and particularly I deal with things related to the Holocaust and Nazi and communist oppression of the peoples that they occupied. So if you're interested, then please subscribe. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours Central European time. That's 1900 hours in the United Kingdom, and all sorts of times in other places as well. So for the moment, all the best from me, and thanks for listening.